Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 12th, 2020. And man, today we are going to talk about what you should do to prioritize your efforts for digital marketing. Because it doesn't matter if you're starting a new business, transitioning online, or if you already have one. Having a strong online presence for your brand is extremely important. So much so, in fact, that 97% of people learn about businesses online more than anywhere else. So we're going to cover the top 4 things you should prioritize with your digital marketing efforts to maximize your ROI. But before we do, let's kick it off with the intro video. Douglas, how are you?
I am awesome. How you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing great. You know, I flew this morning, knocked out another check ride, got another add-on. Life's good.
It's good. Just another notch in the belt.
Another notch in the belt, right?
Jacket. What's more accurate?
I don't know. Notch in the belt. Another. What are the other sayings?
We get stripes on the shoulder.
Yeah, that's a promotion. This is just an add-on.
You know what? Just another plaque for the shelf.
It's another resume booster. Man, so
I'm excited today. We are diving into some of my favorite stuff. I'm pumped.
Super pumped, as Doug likes to say. Today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about prioritizing your efforts for online digital marketing, because it seems to us that we get a lot of questions where people are just overwhelmed with every new thing out there or every existing thing out there. And it's just a lot to manage, and it's a lot to maintain for a lot of people or a small team, even individuals. So today we decided that we're going to hop in and kind of prioritize for you your 4 things that you should be focusing on to really maximize your ROI for your digital marketing efforts. And the reason why we're doing that is because, like I had mentioned in the intro before we kicked this off, was that if COVID wasn't enough and events being canceled, 97% of people find out more about a business and discover businesses online than anywhere else. So you obviously have to put your best foot forward when it comes to creating a customer experience for people online. What do you think about that, Doug?
It's funny. I mean, everyone knew they had to be online, and they just put it off, or they were there with kind of a half-baked presence. And it wasn't really until COVID hit that people were forced to do the thing that they've been putting off. And kind of goes back to just basic human behavior. Most people will not make change willingly until it's forced upon them. So COVID's probably been one of the greatest activators for forcing businesses to take that leap they've been putting off. But what's been really interesting, especially with our clients and a lot of the comments that we keep getting, is people are just saying, it's like, I just don't know where to start.
Yep.
And they start to get into it, and it's just so overwhelming. They're like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing, try to fight my way through it. So that's why when you said, like, this is the rabbit hole we're going down today, I was so excited, because it'll be fun to answer it and put it into a framework where people can just like take a deep breath and realize, like, it doesn't have to be this big thing.
Yep.
You just have to chunk it out in these priorities to understand how the framework works.
Yep. And so the 4 things that we're going to prioritize for you guys today are your website, email marketing, social and other online channels, and then tie it all together, the tracking and conversion tools you need to make sure that everything works for the way it is. Because if you think about it like this in an airplane, you know, you can have all the various components of an airplane working independently, but unless the systems are not talking to each other, you don't really know if you're really going in the right direction or if you're getting the most out of, again, your efforts. So, you know, the cliche saying, you know, stay ahead of the airplane. Like, we're constantly interpreting data and we're constantly making adjustments to making sure that we are ahead of the power curve and that we're able to anticipate and predict, again, where we're going and how things should perform. And that's exactly what digital marketing does. And that's the luxury that we are afforded now in today's age, which before in traditional marketing was a pipe dream, right? You know, you hope that you printed off 3 million of these magazines a quarter and you hope 10 million people saw it, right? Or they shared it with their friends and whatnot. And we'll get into some of that later. But, you know, before there was really no way to qualify that data that people said they did. You know, people got very fascinated and enamored with vanity type metrics, as you can say. But in today's world where there's a lot of constraints, there's a lot of budget constraints and cutbacks, being precise, and obviously in aviation, precision matters. And now we have the data set and the tools available to us to make sure, again, that we're making the best efforts possible.
What I love about that when it comes down to the aviation industry is you get back into the importance of one, systems, but two, just really simple checklists. Like, and I know that in your agency, you guys have the flight plan.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think most people, if they got it down to the level where they had a simple checklist of routines, like this is how you build out some of the more simple things for your marketing, it wouldn't be as this momentous thing that has to be built. So what's the first one, Chris? What are we diving into first?
We'll say website, because I think that's the easiest for people to comprehend. I mean, people have had websites for over a decade now, right? And again, usually that's the storefront, or that's what people find online when they Google, is they look for a website, right? So when it comes to your website, obviously with technology, it continues to evolve. So if you haven't updated your website in the last 10 years, know that the technology has changed of how they build websites now. And Google looks for the ways that, you know, it's crawled and optimized for things. Because I think now, again, everybody, we talked about a lot before, and if people aren't aware, that your site should be optimized for mobile, right? Mobile is now becoming the number one priority. So again, if your website hasn't been updated in the last 10 years, you really need to look at the infrastructure of how your website was built to make sure that it's feeding Google, which again, if you can try and argue with Google, but you're going to lose. If it's not built in a way that is easily indexed and searched by Google, you know, your website's really not going to perform well, no matter how much money in paid advertising or whatever else you want to do to it, how much content you create, your website's simply going to underperform. What are your thoughts on that, Doug?
One of the biggest things I've seen evolve in websites is they're no longer just a brochure. They are just one of the tools in the marketing that are necessary to further the conversation. And companies that understand how to embrace their website as a mechanism to, one, tell their story, but two, convert a customer into somebody that's going to have a conversation with you. Yeah, those are the people that are going to win. But if it's simply there to just be like, hey, this is how awesome we are, and it's a product pitch or a service pitch, and they don't take the storytelling elements into it, those are the places that are struggling to succeed. And that's where you start to see people come in with really solid content strategy stories, or they really focus in on talking about how do we prioritize the end result we get for a customer, and then have those testimonials in there and try to build that. The second thing I've seen is customers building a website and not spending enough to do it properly. And if you find in a position where you're limited by budget and you can't build the proper website, I think people need to just understand then they need to pivot and make more of a campaign page that just helps accelerate the journey. Because a half-baked website is going to have so many broken elements that it's just not going to serve its purpose as a marketing tool. So I would just select a different type of site and focus more on a campaign strategy where you have a landing page that's designed to convert. So if you wanted to like simplify things, it's really just to understand why you're building a site and what you're going to use it for. Yeah. To have a website for just having a website, to me, has become a waste of money in today's day and age.
And I think that's a lot of fault. And this, we'll tie this all in again when we get to the fourth priority, which is the tools. But the whole goal is to drive traffic from everywhere online back to your website. Because again, that is where you create the relationships. That's where you start to own the audience. And that's where you can have real conversations online. And to Doug's point, again, not having a website just to have a website for the sake of vanity, again, does not cut it anymore. And if you don't know where to start, again, Doug had mentioned about creating a landing page. And this, again, is part of your funnel to drive traffic back to your website. This is also how you maximize any paid marketing efforts, any paid ad efforts. Because, again, I can go through every single publication that our industry publishes and look at the ads, and in one magazine count up the number of ad dollars spent from advertisers purchasing that quarter page ad, half page ad, full page ad, whatever. And nothing on that page was to a unique landing page. It's, call our 1-800 number or email our generic, sales@whatever.com, or just visit our regular homepage. There's no attribution model to it. So as an advertiser, as a marketer, as a business, to really know if your advertising's working, like, you need to have that attribution, have a unique landing page. Oh, so that way specifically that ad in that magazine worked. Don't just rely again on third-party data, because we know it's unreliable. And it's just, at that point, again, is it really even the right audience for you? This way your stuff's working. So if you can condense your website down, if you don't understand what's working, create landing pages around campaigns. Again, know what you're trying to sell and who you're trying to sell for, and build a simple landing page around that so you can measure. So I kind of started to skirt into kind of the paid media or social media, I guess, or all channels online. So I guess we'll hop over to that subject, Doug, if we talk about, again, how all these other outlets can feed into, again, bringing people back to your website.
Well, the irony is a lot of people, they spend all the money they have in their marketing budget on the site. And it's almost like that field of dreams paradigm where if you build it, they will come. And they completely miss the whole thought around, how am I going to get traffic to my site? And the second thing you mentioned was email.
Yeah.
And when you get into it, for most people, they completely underestimate how effective even just a small email list can be for driving traffic back. Mm. And if they haven't built a solid foundation for email, the next things they do are never going to work. It wouldn't matter how good your content is, because you need a primary mechanism to get it out to the world first.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're paying for distribution again and again and again. But when you think about a website, you need to understand there's only really two ways that people are going to get to you, and it's either paid, so you're going to either buy traffic through some source, or earned. And the middle one that most people miss is owned, and everybody has some form of email contacts that they have.
Yep.
And just starting there is such a really solid pillar that most people miss or underutilize. Email is not dead. If anything, I will tell you, email is stronger than it's ever been.
I would agree with that. I'd agree with that. And again, like, now that you can create campaigns via email where you're sequencing natural conversations of the sales pipeline, there's really, again, no excuse for that. Again, it's never going to replace you picking up the phone or seeing somebody in person. But again, for you to be able to stay top of mind and in front of people, why wouldn't you utilize that tool? And again, I think you mentioned it's probably the most underutilized tool in the arsenal for people to really grow their business. So,
well, think about it. You spent this money. Let's say you built the website properly, or you built a new landing page. Mm-hmm. You probably have enough family, friends, past business colleagues, prospects just to, hey, we're so excited. We just built this new site. We'd love for you to check it out. But how many people do you know that do that? Other than they maybe take a handful of their friends and say, hey, I have this new thing. Like, they're missing a big opportunity. And as we go through, we'll show you how important the tracking is to close the loop. But there's just this underlying principle that people miss, like how important these things are connected together. Man, email is so underappreciated, but it's such a high performing conversion tool.
It is. And again, email stems from anything you do again online with paid. So again, if you're on social and if you just post regularly, right? This is the other thing that just blows my mind is that we see so many people that, again, that have social accounts, but they haven't converted them to business accounts on Facebook and LinkedIn. And again, you just can't ignore the sheer numbers and the volume of users. That's why you have to be on there because it's another channel to reach a potential customer and a potential audience. So convert those over to business pages. And then as you post, your organic content, eventually you want to have some sort of call to action, right? People are getting familiar with you. They're becoming aware of you. At some point you want them to check out something. This is why having a landing page is so important because as they click on something or if they share something of your post, you should either be able to retarget them in a couple ways. One is like through an email, which is a trigger, which is conversion, which you had mentioned, Doug, or they go to your landing page on your website to check out more about whatever it is you posted about. I mean, those are two surefire conversions right there that I think a lot of people forget to do when they think about why they're posting or where they should post, what they should post. I mean, that's probably your low hanging fruit right there. What's your take on that?
I think one of the things I've seen, especially when you get more into like the executive level, they're reluctant to get involved in social media because they don't know what to post.
Yeah.
And I would look at it too. If you really want to grow your company, you have to create and promote and distribute video.
Yep.
But if you're at the stage where you're just not there yet, you still need to be involved in the conversation on social. Like if you're not promoting content, then fine, go to your competitors or go to like influencers and just engage in the conversation. And those are perfect opportunities to just curate conversations. And then you get into like a DM, let's say first LinkedIn, like there could be a popular thread or news article. Having a point of opinion on that content and then just engaging with people. The whole point of marketing at the end of the day is to facilitate a conversation.
Yep.
So if it's being social on a social platform, you facilitate it. When you get into the DM, guess what? Perfect time to send the link to the website.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can start to move the needle. I still think it's a priority for every business to be active and create content and distribute it. But at a very bare minimum, they need to be participating in social so that they can still get the ecosystem to start to work and start to populate the other elements of content. Start to build that email address. It's like, hey, listen, I got something I'd love to send you. What's your email? Boom, we just went back up to pillar number 2.
Yeah. Well, it's one to many. I mean, that's why we pay so much to go to events, right? Because you're able to mix and mingle and hopefully, find yourself in the middle of a conversation during a cocktail hour or some other type reception. I mean, literally the stuff doesn't happen like on the trade show floor. It's the dinners, it's the events. It's all that after hours type stuff where you get roped into these amazing conversations and meet great people. That's what you're doing online. And again, because we can't have these in-person events anymore, this is why it's so paramount to be having these conversations and trying to interject yourself or be a part of conversations that are happening online because you just never know who you're going to meet, right? And if you can create that connection from one to many online from the comfort of your home, I mean, you could be wearing your PJs, having your coffee in the morning, and just having morning conversations with people like, hey, saw this going on in the news today, or talking about that. Again, you're just trying to strike up as many conversations as you have. So don't be spammy. With that, I mean, don't just hit somebody out of the blue and be like, hey, you don't know me, but I'm going to email you stuff for a hard pitch. It's like that. Yeah. It's like walking into the bar and seeing a girl and be like, hey, do you want to marry me? And she has no idea who the heck you are. You're probably going to get smacked. Yeah. You're going to go straight to the
I mean, you ask enough people, you might get a yes.
Look, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, but that's definitely not the way you want to do it if you want to maximize your ROI. That's not the most efficient stuff. So, Yeah. So with social and being online, again, you need to be out there posting content organically. You need to be engaging in conversations. And then you certainly have to be doing paid ads because, again, anytime there's a free platform like LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, anything else that's free for users to hop on, you have to pay for their attention because the audience is the commodity. And again, you cannot argue with the volume of users on those platforms. And again, we talked in a previous episode about what platforms should be on whatever, that's always going to ebb and flow because there's always going to be the new hot thing. But again, you can't argue with LinkedIn and Google and Facebook right now. Just the sheer volume of users and your ability to target through paid advertising the exact type customer you want. And it doesn't matter, again, if you think it's just for people sharing cat memes and GIFs and pictures of food and grandbabies. Like, yes, some users may use it to that effect, but that doesn't change the fact that that's another opportunity for you to create a touch point and have an impression on a potential customer or audience again. Like what, Doug, when it comes to paid media, again, paid advertising and paid posts, all that stuff, talk about how that kind of, again, relates back to email and website and why, again, not only should we be posting regularly, but when you do a paid ad, like why that all makes sense to have, again, that continued, that nudge or that boost of a post there.
If you think about like how there's two things to that. Number one, we're going to touch on in tracking, but how they're all interconnected. So I'm going to come back to that.
Yep.
But if you think about a social platform and how they work, it's kind of like the Hotel California, especially when you
love
look
the
at
Eagles.
LinkedIn and Facebook, right? They want you to come in and they don't ever want you to leave. Yep. So if you're an active contributor and you're posting video content as an example, that's good and people are watching, that means somebody's come in and they've stayed longer. And if you're producing longer form content, it means that platform can serve more ad units because they'll serve it interjected in video content before, after, etc. So when you create content and you're actively engaged, the platforms want to reward you. And if you then add in advertising to that, you're just further doubling down those type of engagements. And at the end of the day, every platform that allows you to run ads, they do want you to be successful because you'll spend more if you're getting a positive ROI.
Yep.
The problem is most people just don't understand like some of the fundamentals of how the ads have to work, which ad to pick when, which we'll cover in another episode. But your active engagement, even if you're not necessarily actively posting, but you're contributing to the platform, like even adding a more in-depth comment on any platform essentially just means that somebody's going to come in and they're going to read that comment and spend more time on the post. And the last piece of that is it's helping build a broader data profile.
Yeah.
The more engagement that people have, the more they learn. And most all platforms are now using language processing. So they're literally going in and reading and figuring out, okay, like I understand the theme. I understand the sentiment. I understand what this cohort of people really care about. So I now know what to serve. So from a monetization standpoint, they're going to take this information and they're going to move it over into the ad platform and say, hey, I know that these people watching this really care about website development, or they really care about this specific niche of a political event. That's why, especially coming now into November and the election cycles, like that data profiling is going to be so much more expensive.
Yeah, and again, so when you post online and you serve that audience, again, you're getting more and more data points. And this is why having the tracking tools, I guess point number 4 is what you should prioritize. None of this matters unless you're accurately measuring what you need to do. And I had mentioned earlier social profiles about people converting to business profiles, right? Once you start doing that, you start getting into pixels and installing pixels of these are lines of code that translate over from your social profile that you can start extracting data from so you can go back and retarget those people. So again, if you're getting posts that are doing well, obviously you're doing something, right? So that's where you start testing again. Is that the next step of a sales conversation, right? And that's where you need to be able to have the ability to go back and retarget them. And if they respond to that ad, this is why, going back to point number one, website, you need to create a landing page. Because now if they're engaging with that ad, they click on it and drives you back to your website. Now you know for sure they've, at this point, has probably become a pretty solid sales qualified lead. But it doesn't stop there. You know, once you get back to your website, there's the ability now, like every single piece of traffic that comes to your website, you know, we can help you convert and identify those people. So that way you can have a list of website visitors that are 100% chance for leads and prospects that your sales team can go back and do. And again, none of this stuff works. The online, the email, the social, none of this means anything if you're not tracking and have the proper tracking tools in place to aggregate the right data for your marketing efforts, which again is another area where people fall short, forget, or neglect.
It's funny. One of the greatest business lessons I learned is you can't improve what you can't track.
Ooh, I like that.
And coupled with one of the, I think there's an ongoing joke in marketing that 50% of our marketing works, but
which 50%?
The better you can get at understanding where your customers are coming from. And again, let me restate that, where your customers are coming from. Because most people look at it as like, oh, I got 10,000 website visitors. Cool. Like that means absolutely nothing. Or, oh, I'm number one for this category. Cool. Did that convert to revenue? Like being ranked for an irrelevant category doesn't help your business. Just because you get traffic doesn't help your business. You need to be focused on like three primary numbers. Number one is lifetime value. Mm-hmm. Number two is your customer acquisition costs. And number three are your cost per lead. Yep. But if you haven't set up tracking mechanisms to understand the inputs of where people are coming from, it is virtually impossible for you to run a successful marketing campaign or any type of marketing strategy. And I'm not talking about getting super advanced and running multiple A/B tests for, hey, copy versus this or red button versus green button. I'm talking about just base level fundamentals. Did they come through Google Organic? Did they come from a social post? Or did they come from my email? Mm-hmm. And of those channels, which ones produces the most amount of revenue? Because for most people, especially now being cash strapped, they're going to have to get really creative and really strategic and probably be more selective about where am I going to reinvest my marketing dollars? And if they have not done the fundamentals of putting the tracking in, they might as well light it on fire.
100%. And, you know, again, the funny point to add on to that, Doug, is again, like, yeah, doing the fundamentals right and tracking that again is, if you don't know where your traffic's coming, and that's why I think a lot of people marketing budgets are the first to get cut. You know, when times get tough, it's because they've never set up or they've never identified, again, like you mentioned, the lifetime value of a customer acquisition cost per lead. Nobody's really ever tracked that or identified that. So of course, all your marketing looks like it's, you know, it becomes an expenditure at that point on the P&L. But really smart marketers, really smart business people know that marketing is probably the single greatest investment that you can do for your business. And I'll argue that all day long. I mean, there's plenty of case studies and very successful business people that have attested to that, right?
Well, I think the best way to get through a recession, you have to market. Mm-hmm. And whether that means paid or whether that means just that grunt work of you doing outreach, like email, for example.
Yep.
That's what we said. Like one of the fundamentals, you go back to email. If you can't afford or you don't have a big advertising budget, you better just pound the email and just find ways to connect with people, engage, share content. If you have your own, share news article. But there are free things you can use, like using Google Analytics or some mail tracking tools like, hey, did the person open the email? Okay, cool. They opened it, didn't reply. I need to follow up. Mm-hmm. Like there are so many tools that make it easier to understand what is working and what's not. But people just, I think, don't know how to look at and interpret the data. And that's why it's really important for people to understand, like, don't be focused necessarily on tracking just traffic. Understand how to set up. Did they accomplish a goal? Did they fill out a form? Or did they watch something? Right? Like, for example, like if you're going to produce a video that's somewhat sales oriented, like you don't want to just track likes because that's irrelevant. You want to know how many people watched all the way till the end. And if you've set it up correctly, I can now figure out how to follow up with the people who've watched all the way to the end. I want to have a conversation with that person, not just the person that watched the first 3 seconds. Because it's going to be a more meaningful conversation.
100%. So to kind of recap again, like what you should prioritize for digital marketing again, because I know we're getting into the back end of 2020 and we really need to start focusing on how we can maximize, make the most out of 2020 and hopefully that 2021 is a better year. And again, it starts with your website. We talked about prioritizing your website, email, online and social channels, and the tracking tools. And if you need any help with that, because look, Doug and I are so passionate about helping businesses and getting through this, is that, we'll give you guys a free audit and point you in the right direction to get you started, because I know it's a lot. This is something so simple that we can do probably in our sleep because we've done it enough times to just say, yep, here's like the 10 things that we need to fix in our checklist. Because I talked about our digital flight plan. We have a checklist of things that we go through to make sure, hey, at a minimum, at the table stakes, this is what you need to have to be able to compete in today's world. But again, you got to do more than compete. You want to thrive. That's where all this starts coming in, and then we can start helping you guys figure out a more robust plan that's going to start moving the needle more. But again, at the bare minimum, you need to prioritize those 4 things, get the tools set up. And if you need help with that, again, shoot us a message, put a comment in here so that we know that you watched it, and we'll make sure that you're one of the free audits. You can come on, have a phone call with us, and we'll walk you through everything. We'll do a screen share, and again, probably in about 20 minutes, you'll have everything set up that you need, at least to get you going in the right direction and not make you feel like your head's spinning. What do you think about that, Doug?
Sounds perfect.
Awesome. All right. Don't forget, you guys, if you liked it, like, share. Again, we really, really want to put out in the world good, relevant, quality information for people to make their businesses better. And hopefully you do, because it's a tough time. And this is why we're doing this. We want to see you guys survive and thrive. And with that being said, thank you all for tuning in today. We will see you next week on Marketing at 30,000 Feet. See ya.
Take care, everybody.